The gunshot echoed across Redemption Creek as Amelia Anderson sprinted through the dusty streets, her heart pounding against her ribs like a blacksmith's hammer. The year was 1878, and in this unforgiving corner of the Arizona Territory, a woman on the run was as good as dead. Especially one accused of murder. Blood trickled down her arm from where the bullet had grazed her, but Amelia wouldn't stop. Behind her, the angry voices of the mob grew louder, fueled by whiskey and vengeance for a crime she didn't commit. There she goes. "Don't let the murderess escape," Sheriff Dawson's voice boomed above the others. Amelia darted between two weathered buildings, her cream-colored dress now stained with dust and blood. She'd been the school teacher in this town for less than 6 months, keeping to herself, trying to outrun her past. Now she was running again, this time from a present she hadn't created. The saloon doors of the Rusty Spur swung open as she stumbled inside, desperate for somewhere to hide. The piano player's fingers froze mid-note, and a dozen pairs of eyes turned toward her. "Please," she gasped, clutching her wounded arm. "They're going to hang me for something I didn't do." A tall figure stood from a corner table, spurs jingling softly as boots crossed the wooden floor. Quincy Vaughn's face was partially obscured by the shadow of his hat, but his eyes were clear and steady as they assessed her. The notorious bounty hunter's reputation preceded him throughout the territory fair but relentless, a man who always found his mark. "Upstairs," he said quietly, nodding toward a narrow staircase. "Room 3. Without questioning why this dangerous stranger would help her, Amelia rushed toward the stairs. Behind her, she heard Quincy addressing the room. "Anybody speaks of seeing this lady, they'll answer to me, clear." Murmurs of assent followed as she climbed the stairs, finding the door marked with a tarnished number 3. Inside was a sparse but clean room, a bed, washstand, and window overlooking the back alley. Amelia sank onto the bed, her hands trembling as she examined the wound on her arm. Minutes later, the door opened and Quincy entered with a cloth and bottle of whiskey. "This will hurt," he said, pouring the amber liquid onto the cloth. Amelia bit her lip to keep from crying out as he cleaned her wound. "Why are you helping me?" she asked when she could trust her voice again. His hands were surprisingly gentle for a man who made his living tracking outlaws. "I don't much care for lynch mobs. They tend to hang first and ask questions never. They found Mayor Collins dead in the schoolhouse," she explained, wincing as he wrapped a clean bandage around her arm. "I was there after hours, preparing lessons. I heard a noise, went to investigate, and found him. There was so much blood." Her voice cracked. "I tried to help him, but he was already gone. Someone hit me from behind. When I woke, the sheriff and half the town were standing over me, calling me murderer." Quincy's expression remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes. "Why would they think you killed him?" The mayor had been persistent in his attentions toward me. I refused him repeatedly. "Everyone knew about it." Amelia looked up, meeting his gaze directly. "I didn't kill him, Mr. Vaughn. Most folks who say that are lying," he replied evenly. "I'm not most folks." A commotion outside drew them to the window. Sheriff Dawson and his deputies were going door to door, searching for her. It wouldn't be long before they reached the Rusty Spur. "We need to leave," Quincy said, checking his revolver. "My horse is out back." "Why risk yourself for me? You don't know me." His lips quirked slightly. "Call it professional curiosity. I've never helped a fugitive escape before." "I'm not a fugitive," she insisted. "I'm innocent." Footsteps thundered on the stairs outside. Quincy moved to the door, pressing his ear against it. "They're checking rooms," he whispered, retrieving a spare pistol from his boot and offering it to her. "Can you shoot?" Amelia took the gun with steady hands. "My father taught me, never thought I'd need the skill." "Let's hope you still don't." He moved to the window, sliding it open. "There's an overhang below. We can make it to the alley." As they prepared to climb out, shouts erupted from downstairs. The sheriff had arrived. Quincy helped Amelia through the window first, then followed, carefully closing it behind them. They crouched on the narrow wooden overhang. "Jump when I tell you," he instructed, gauging the distance to the ground. "I'll go first and catch you." Quincy dropped silently to the alley below, then motioned for her to follow. Amelia hesitated only a moment before letting herself fall into his waiting arms. He caught her with surprising strength, setting her gently on her feet. "My horse is behind the blacksmith's," he said, leading her deeper into the shadows of the alley. "Stay close." They moved through the town's maze of back passageways, freezing whenever voices or footsteps came near. Amelia's heart raced, but she matched Quincy's silent stride, grateful for the growing darkness as twilight settled over Redemption Creek. At the blacksmith's, a magnificent black stallion waited, already saddled. Quincy helped Amelia mount, then swung up behind her. With a gentle nudge, the horse took off, its hooves muffled by the soft dirt as they rode away from town. "Where are we going?" Amelia asked, her voice barely audible over the wind. "I have a cabin," Quincy replied, his breath warm against her ear. "A day's ride from here, no one knows about it." They rode through the night, stopping only to rest the horse and drink from Quincy's canteen. By dawn, the desert landscape had given way to scrubby foothills and scattered pines. They climbed higher, following trails that seemed invisible to Amelia's untrained eye. Near midday, they reached a small cabin nestled in a stand of ponderosa pines, a stream gurgling nearby. It was simple but solid, with a stone chimney and small porch. "Home sweet home," Quincy said, dismounting and helping Amelia down. Her legs wobbled beneath her after the long ride. "It's not much, but it's safe." Inside, the cabin was surprisingly comfortable. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, a bed occupied another, and a small table with 2 chairs sat near a window. Shelves held provisions, books, and ammunition. "You can take the bed," Quincy said, lighting a lamp. "I'll sleep by the fire." Amelia sank into one of the chairs, exhaustion washing over her. "Why are you doing this? You're a bounty hunter. Shouldn't you be taking me back for the reward?" Quincy removed his hat, revealing thick dark hair and a face younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps 30, with lines that spoke of hard living rather than age. "There's no bounty on you, not officially, and something about this doesn't sit right." He hung his gun belt on a hook by the door. "Mayor Collins wasn't exactly beloved, he had enemies." "How do you know that?" "It's my business to know people." Quincy busied himself building a fire. "I've been tracking a man across 3 territories. Trail led to Redemption Creek. I've been watching the town for 2 weeks." Amelia leaned forward. "This man you're tracking, could he be the real killer?" "Possible. He's killed before." The fire caught, casting dancing shadows across the cabin walls. "Get some rest, Miss Anderson. Tomorrow we start figuring out how to clear your name. And if we can't." Quincy looked up, firelight reflecting in his eyes. "There's always Mexico." Amelia woke to the smell of coffee. Sunlight streamed through the cabin's single window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was then. Yesterday's events came rushing back. The murder, the chase, the escape with a stranger. Quincy sat at the table, cleaning his revolver with methodical precision. A pot of coffee simmered on the small cast iron stove. "Morning," he said, not looking up from his work. "Coffee's hot if you want some." Amelia rose, straightening her rumpled dress as best she could. "Thank you for everything," he nodded, reassembling his weapon with practiced ease. "Your arm need tending," she examined the bandage. A small spot of blood had seeped through, but the pain had subsided to a dull throb. "It's better, I think." Quincy poured her a cup of coffee, then returned to the table. "We need to talk about what happened, every detail." For the next hour, Amelia recounted everything, arriving in Redemption Creek 6 months earlier, taking the teaching position, the mayor's unwanted advances, and finally, the night of the murder. Quincy listened without interruption, his expression thoughtful. "So you never saw who hit you?" he asked when she finished. "No, I bent down to check the mayor's pulse and then, nothing. When I came to, the sheriff was there with his gun drawn and townsfolk were pouring in. And the murder weapon, a letter opener, from my desk." Amelia's hands tightened around her cup. "That's why they're so certain it was me. My fingerprints would be on it." Quincy leaned back, considering. The mayor had to have enemies. Men in power always do. "There was talk," Amelia said hesitantly, "about land deals, something to do with the railroad coming through. Some people lost their homes, their ranches. That's a start." Quincy stood, strapping on his gun belt. "I need to go back to town, ask some questions." "You can't." Amelia rose too, alarmed. "They'll know you helped me." No one saw us together except the folks in the saloon, and they won't talk." He pulled on his hat. "I'll be back by nightfall, bar the door after I leave." Before she could protest further, he was gone, the sound of hoofbeats fading into the distance. Amelia moved to the window, watching until he disappeared among the trees. Alone in the unfamiliar cabin, she felt strangely bereft. The day passed slowly. Amelia explored the cabin, finding it better stocked than she'd initially thought. Besides provisions, there were books, histories, a Bible, even a volume of poetry by Whitman. She wondered about the man who owned this solitary retreat, what had led him to the life of a bounty hunter. As promised, Quincy returned as twilight painted the sky in shades of orange and purple. Amelia had been watching for him, relief flooding her when she spotted his tall figure approaching. She unbarred the door, noting immediately the tight set of his jaw. "What happened? What did you learn?" Quincy removed his hat, running a hand through his hair. "The town's in an uproar. They've formed search parties looking for you." He hung up his gun belt. "But I found something interesting." "Two things, actually." He pulled a folded paper from his vest pocket. "First, this was in the mayor's desk. The sheriff didn't think to look there." He unfolded it, a deed transfer, the ink still fresh. The mayor was selling land to the railroad for a fraction of what he paid the original owners. Amelia studied the document. He was cheating people out of their land, appears so, and pocketing the difference. Quincy took the paper back. "Second thing, the bartender at the Golden Nugget mentioned seeing the mayor arguing with someone the afternoon before he was killed. A rancher named Tucker who lost his spread in one of these deals. Could this Tucker have killed him? Maybe, but there's more." Quincy's expression darkened. "The sheriff's deputy, Morris, was seen leaving the schoolhouse shortly before you were found. He claimed he was making rounds, but the timing's suspicious." "Deputy Morris," Amelia frowned. "He was always at the mayor's side during town meetings." "Exactly, and word is they were partners in these land deals." Amelia sat heavily in a chair. "So either this rancher killed the mayor for revenge, or his own deputy killed him for what, money, or to silence him?" Quincy poured himself coffee. "Either way, we need proof. How do we get that when the entire territory is hunting me?" Quincy's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "I have a few ideas." Over the next 3 days, Quincy came and went from the cabin, always returning with more information. The pieces of the puzzle began to form a clearer picture. Mayor Collins and Deputy Morris had indeed been partners in the land scheme. Tucker, the rancher, had threatened the mayor publicly after losing his property. And most interestingly, Morris had been seen arguing with the mayor the very morning of the murder. Morris had blood on his sleeve that night, Quincy told Amelia on the 4th evening. "One of the saloon girls noticed it when he came in for a drink after they found you. She didn't think anything of it at the time." "We need to talk to her," Amelia said. "Already did. She's willing to testify to what she saw." Quincy hesitated. "But it's not enough, we need more." That night, as they sat by the fire, Amelia felt a shift in the atmosphere between them. Over these days of forced proximity, something had changed. She found herself watching him when he wasn't looking, the careful way he moved, the rare smile that transformed his serious face. "Tell me about yourself," she said suddenly. "How does someone become a bounty hunter?" Quincy stared into the fire for a long moment. "My family had a ranch in Texas. It was raided while I was away. My parents, my sister, all killed." His voice remained even, but Amelia heard the pain beneath the words. "The law did nothing, so I tracked the men responsible myself." "You found them?" "Every last one." He looked up, meeting her gaze. "After that, it seemed like the only thing I was good for, tracking men who needed finding. And the man you were tracking in Redemption Creek, Samuel Ross, wanted for murder in 3 territories. Last seen heading toward Redemption Creek 2 weeks ago." Quincy added a log to the fire. "But I'm beginning to think he moved on, or the information was wrong." Amelia watched the flames dance. "I haven't thanked you properly for believing me when no one else would." "I've seen enough liars to recognize the truth when I hear it." His eyes met hers across the fire. "Besides, school teachers don't usually have murder in them. No, I've had a few students who might disagree." The joke surprised both of them, and Quincy actually laughed, a rich, rusty sound that suggested it didn't happen often. The moment stretched between them, comfortable and charged at once. Quincy cleared his throat, breaking the spell. We should get some rest. Tomorrow I need to check on something in town. The next morning, Amelia woke to find Quincy already gone, a note left on the table. Back by noon, stay inside. But noon came and went with no sign of him. As afternoon faded into evening, Amelia's worry grew. Had he been caught? Discovered helping her, just after sunset when she'd nearly decided to go looking for him, hoofbeats approached the cabin. But instead of Quincy's steady pace, these were fast, urgent. Amelia grabbed the pistol he'd left for her and moved to the window. Relief washed over her when she saw it was Quincy, but the feeling was short-lived. Even in the dim light, she could see he was slumped in the saddle, one hand pressed to his side. She rushed outside. What happened? Morris, Quincy managed, sliding from the horse with a grunt of pain. He saw me, must have suspected something. Amelia helped him inside, easing him onto the bed. When she pulled his hand away from his side, it came away red. You've been shot, just grazed, like you. He tried for a smile that turned into a grimace. But he knows someone's asking questions now. We need to move quickly. Amelia cut away his shirt, cleaning the wound as he had done for her. It was indeed a graze, deep but not life-threatening. You could have been killed, occupational hazard. He watched her work. I found something, though, worth the risk. What? Morris keeps a journal, detailed records of all their dealings. I couldn't take it would be missed too quickly, but I read enough. He and the mayor had a falling out. Collins was planning to take the money and run, leaving Morris to face the consequences if the scheme was discovered. Amelia finished bandaging his side. So Morris killed him and found you there the perfect scapegoat. Quincy sat up carefully. But that's not all. Morris is planning to leave town tomorrow, taking the money and running just like Collins was going to. Then we're out of time. We need to stop him before he disappears. Quincy nodded grimly. We ride at dawn. Despite his injury, Quincy insisted he was fit to travel. They left the cabin at first light, taking a circuitous route toward Redemption Creek to avoid the search parties that still combed the hills. The plan is simple, Quincy explained as they rode. We intercept Morris before he leaves town, force him to confess. And if he refuses, we have enough to make the sheriff listen. Between the land deeds, the saloon girl's testimony, and what I read in that journal, it should be enough to at least raise doubts about your guilt. They reached the outskirts of town by mid-morning, tethering the horse in a grove of cottonwoods near the creek. From there, they could see the main street, including the sheriff's office and Morris's small house behind it. There, Quincy pointed. Saddlebags are on his porch. He's getting ready to leave. They watched as Morris emerged from his house, carrying more bags. He looked nervous, constantly scanning the street as he loaded his horse. Now what? Amelia whispered. Quincy checked his revolver. Now we confront him. You stay here. No, Amelia's voice was firm. This is my life at stake. I'm coming with you. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Stay behind me. If anything goes wrong, you run. Understand? They approached from behind the buildings, using alleyways to avoid being seen. When they reached Morris's house, he was just returning inside. Quincy motioned for Amelia to wait, then slipped around to the front door. Amelia watched from the corner of the house, heart pounding as Quincy knocked. When Morris opened the door, his expression changed from annoyance to shock to fear in rapid succession. Vaughn, what? We need to talk, deputy. Quincy pushed his way inside, and Amelia quickly followed, closing the door behind them. Morris's hand went to his gun, but Quincy was faster, drawing his revolver in one smooth motion. I wouldn't. What is this? Morris demanded, eyes darting between them. When he saw Amelia, his face paled further. You're harboring a fugitive, Vaughn. That's a hanging offense. Funny thing about that, Quincy said calmly. I've been doing some investigating, found some interesting papers, had some informative conversations. He gestured to the saddlebags in the corner. Planning a trip, Morris licked his lips nervously. Just routine patrol, with all your worldly possessions and the town's money. Quincy shook his head. We know about the land scheme, Morris. We know Collins was going to double-cross you. And we know you killed him for it. That's ridiculous. She killed him. Morris pointed at Amelia. Everyone knows it. Because you made sure they would think so, Amelia said, stepping forward. You hit me from behind, put the letter opener in my hand, and then discovered me with the body." "You can't prove any of this," Morris said, but sweat beaded on his forehead. "The saloon girl saw the blood on your sleeve that night," Quincy said. "Your journal details your partnership with Collins and your argument the day he died. And those saddlebags are probably full of money that belongs to the town." He advanced a step. "It's over, Morris." For a moment, it seemed the deputy might surrender. Then, with shocking speed, he lunged at Amelia, grabbing her arm and twisting it behind her back, using her as a shield. "Drop the gun, Vaughn, or I'll break her arm." Quincy's expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened on his revolver. "Let her go, Morris. You're only making it worse for yourself." "Drop it." Morris tightened his grip, making Amelia gasp in pain. Slowly, Quincy lowered his weapon to the floor. "All right, now let her go," Morris laughed harshly. "I don't think so. She's my ticket out of here." He began backing toward the door, dragging Amelia with him. "Anyone tries to follow me, she dies, understand?" What happened next occurred so quickly that Amelia barely had time to register it. As Morris reached for the doorknob behind him, she drove her heel into his instep with all her strength. He yelled in pain, his grip loosening just enough for her to twist free. In the same instant, Quincy dove for his gun. Morris, recovering, reached for his own weapon. 2 shots rang out almost simultaneously. Morris crumpled to the floor, a red stain spreading across his chest. Quincy staggered backward, clutching his shoulder. "Quincy!" Amelia rushed to him. "You're hit." "I'm all right," he grimaced, examining the wound. "Clean through, Morris?" Amelia glanced at the deputy. His eyes were open, staring sightlessly at the ceiling. "He's dead." The gunshots had not gone unnoticed. Shouts erupted outside and footsteps pounded toward the house. "Sheriff's coming," Quincy said, leaning against the wall. "Remember, we have evidence. Don't panic." The door burst open and Sheriff Dawson entered, gun drawn, followed by several armed townsmen. His eyes widened at the scene before him, Morris dead on the floor, Quincy wounded, and Amelia Anderson, the woman he'd been hunting for nearly a week, standing in the middle of it all. "Don't shoot," Quincy said calmly. "We can explain everything." "You'd better," Dawson growled, keeping his gun trained on them. "Starting with why my deputy is dead and you're harboring a murderess." "She's innocent," Quincy said firmly. "Morris killed the mayor." For the next hour, they laid out their evidence while a doctor tended to Quincy's wound. The land deeds, the witness statements, Morris's suspicious behavior, and finally, the saddlebags, which indeed contained both town funds and personal belongings, clear evidence of his planned escape. Sheriff Dawson listened with growing disbelief and anger. When they finished, he sat heavily in a chair, rubbing his weathered face. "All this happening under my nose," he muttered. "Collins and Morris both corrupt as the day is long." "They kept you out of it deliberately," Quincy pointed out. "You were too honest." Dawson looked up at Amelia. "I owe you an apology, Miss Anderson. It seems I was ready to hang an innocent woman." "You were doing your job based on the evidence you had," she said quietly. "Still," the sheriff stood, "I need to make this right." Within hours, the truth spread throughout Redemption Creek. The sheriff called a town meeting, publicly clearing Amelia's name and explaining Morris's guilt. Many townsfolk were shocked. Others, particularly those who had lost land in the schemes, were vindicated. The mayor's funeral, planned for the following day, was a subdued affair, his legacy now tarnished by the revelation of his crimes. Amelia attended, standing at the back of the crowd, aware of the curious and sometimes ashamed glances cast her way. Quincy stood beside her, his arm in a sling but otherwise recovering well. "You can go back to teaching now," he said as they walked away from the cemetery. "Your life can return to normal." Amelia considered this. "I'm not sure I want to stay in Redemption Creek. There will always be those who wonder if I was really innocent." They reached the schoolhouse, which had been closed since the murder. Amelia unlocked the door, stepping inside for the first time since that night. The bloodstains had been cleaned away, but the memory remained. "Where will you go?" Quincy asked, following her in. "I don't know." She ran her fingers over her desk, remembering the lessons she had planned, the future she had envisioned here. "What about you? Will you continue tracking this Samuel Ross? Actually, I got word this morning. He was caught in Tucson." Quincy moved closer to her. which means my services are currently available. Available? Amelia turned to face him, suddenly aware of how close he was standing. I was thinking of settling down, maybe find a different line of work. His eyes held hers, one that doesn't involve so much shooting. What did you have in mind? My family's old ranch in Texas. It's been sitting empty all these years. Good land. Could be something again with the right care. Amelia felt her heart quicken. That sounds like a significant undertaking. It would be. His voice softened. Not something a man should do alone. The implication hung in the air between them. Amelia thought of the past week, the danger, the fear, but also the moments by the fire, the growing connection between them. This man who had risked everything to prove her innocent. Are you asking me to come with you, Mr. Vaughn? She asked quietly. I am. He took her hand. I know it's sudden. We've only known each other a week, but in that time I've come to admire your courage, your intelligence, your determination. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I'm not offering marriage, not yet. That would be too presumptuous. But I am offering a partnership, a fresh start for both of us. Amelia looked around the schoolhouse once more. Despite being cleared of wrongdoing, she knew Quincy was right. Some doubts would always linger in this town. And the thought of continuing here alone with these memories held little appeal. When would we leave? She asked. A smile spread across his face, a real one this time, transforming his features. Whenever you're ready, tomorrow, next week. Tomorrow, she decided. I have nothing keeping me here, he nodded, then hesitated before speaking again. There's something else you should know about why I believed you so quickly. He led her to a chair, sitting beside her. The man I was tracking, Samuel Ross, he has a pattern. He finds wealthy men, gets close to them, then kills them and disappears with their money. You think he might have killed the mayor? I considered it, but the timing was wrong and the method didn't match his usual approach. Quincy squeezed her hand. But when I saw you that night in the saloon, something told me you were telling the truth. I've learned to trust that instinct. Amelia studied his face, seeing the sincerity there. That first night when I told you, they didn't believe I was innocent. And I said I'd swear it under oath, he finished. I meant it then, I still do. The following morning, as dawn painted the eastern sky with strokes of pink and gold, Amelia and Quincy rode out of Redemption Creek. She carried some clothes, a few books, mementos from her teaching days. But as they crested the ridge above town, Amelia felt lightness rather than loss. Ready for Texas? Quincy asked, his horse walking steadily beside hers. She smiled, facing the rising sun. Ready for anywhere as long as it's forward. The journey to Texas took nearly 3 weeks. They traveled at an unhurried pace, stopping in small towns along the way, getting to know each other beyond the intensity of their first meeting. Amelia discovered Quincy's dry humor, his unexpected knowledge of literature, his habit of humming quietly when lost in thought. He learned of her childhood in Boston, her decision to teach in the West after her parents' deaths, her talent for sketching the landscapes they passed. When they finally reached the Vaughn Ranch in the hill country of Central Texas, Amelia was unprepared for its beauty. Rolling grasslands stretched to distant hills, bisected by a clear stream. The main house stood empty but solid, weathered but unbroken by the years of abandonment. It's beautiful, she breathed as they rode up the long drive. It needs work, Quincy cautioned, surveying the overgrown fields and weathered fences. Lots of it. Then we'd better get started. They settled into a routine quickly. Mornings were spent repairing the house, replacing broken windows, fixing the roof, clearing away years of dust and neglect. Afternoons, Quincy worked on the outbuildings and fences while Amelia planted a vegetable garden and made the house a home again. They slept in separate rooms, maintaining propriety despite their isolated location. But as weeks passed, their evening conversations by the fire grew longer, the silences between them more comfortable yet charged with unspoken feelings. One evening, about 2 months after their arrival, Amelia found Quincy on the porch, watching the sunset paint the hills in shades of purple and gold. She sat beside him, handing him a cup of coffee. I received a letter today, she said, from Sheriff Dawson. Quincy turned to her, eyebrow raised. Good news or bad? Good, I think. He says they found Morris's journal hidden in a floorboard in his house. It details everything: the land scheme, his plan to kill the mayor, even how he deliberately framed me afterward. So any lingering doubts about your innocence are gone. Yes, she sipped her coffee. He also mentioned that the town is looking for a new teacher, asked if I'd consider returning. Quincy was silent for a long moment. Will you go? No, she placed her hand over his. My life is here now. Relief washed over his features. I was afraid you might want to leave, return to teaching. I can teach anywhere. There are children on neighboring ranches who need education, she smiled. Besides, we've put too much work into this place for me to abandon it now. Quincy set down his cup, turning to face her fully. Amelia, I need to ask you something. Yes, he took both her hands in his. These past months have been the happiest of my life. Having you here, working alongside you, talking with you each evening, it's become everything to me. His voice deepened. I love you. I think I have since that first night when you stood in the saloon, wounded but unbroken, determined to prove your innocence. Amelia's heart soared. I love you too. Then would you do me the honor of becoming my wife, making this ranch our home permanently? Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will. He kissed her then, gently at first, then with growing passion as the sunset faded and stars began to appear in the darkening sky. They were married 2 weeks later in the small church of the nearest town. The ceremony was simple, attended by a few neighbors they'd come to know. The minister spoke of new beginnings, of building a life together, words that resonated deeply with both of them. That night, as husband and wife, they stood on the porch of their home, looking out over the land that was flourishing once more under their care. Did you ever imagine, Amelia asked, leaning against his shoulder, when you helped a desperate woman escape a lynch mob, that you'd end up here? Quincy's arm tightened around her waist. No, but I've never been happier to be proven wrong about where life was leading me. From a bounty hunter to a rancher, she mused. Quite a change, the best kind. He kissed the top of her head. What about you? From a schoolteacher accused of murder to a rancher's wife. With a schoolroom being built in town where I'll teach 3 days a week, she reminded him. They had decided she would continue her profession, teaching the children of neighboring ranches and their own someday. A perfect compromise. In the years that followed, the Vaughn ranch prospered. They added cattle, then horses. The house grew with the addition of 2 wings, and their family grew to first a son, named James after Quincy's father, then twin girls who inherited Amelia's golden hair and their father's steady gaze. On warm evenings, the family would gather on the porch, watching the sunset. Quincy and Amelia would exchange glances over their children's heads, remembering the unlikely path that had brought them together. Sometimes, Quincy would catch her looking at him with a certain expression, and he knew she was thinking of that night in Redemption Creek, when a desperate woman had burst into a saloon seeking help, and a bounty hunter had made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Do you ever regret it? He asked her once as they watched their children playing in the yard. Leaving everything behind, coming here with me, Amelia smiled, the years having only enhanced her beauty in his eyes. Not for a single moment, you believed in me when no one else would. You risked everything to help a stranger. Not just any stranger, he said, taking her hand. The woman who would become my heart. As twilight deepened into night, they called the children inside. Later, with the house quiet and their children sleeping, Quincy and Amelia stood once more on the porch, arms around each other, looking up at the star-filled Texas sky. Do you remember what I whispered to you that first night? He asked. Yes, she replied softly. They don't believe I'm innocent, I said, and I promised to swear it under oath. He turned her in his arms. I never had to make that oath in court, but I make it to you now again under these stars. I will always believe in you, Amelia, always stand by your side. Always love you until my last breath. And I will always love you, she whispered back. My defender, my partner, my home. Their lips met in a kiss that held all the promise of their shared future, a future built from the ashes of danger and accusation, transformed through courage and trust into something beautiful and enduring. A love story that had begun with a desperate plea and a whispered promise, now written across the Texas sky in stars that would shine for eternity.